Hi, my name is Sean, and welcome to my comic book room, also known as my shrine to virginity. I'll be talking about some of my key or expensive comic book issues. I'll show you different ways that I store my comics. For example, I have this shelf, I have this shelf, I have these comic book drawer boxes, which are actually super awesome. I'll show you my different statues and talk about some that I really love and some that I would suggest you don't buy. I'll do a quick rundown on how I record my videos. And then these aren't in the comic book room, but I'll show off my arcade collection a little bit and show you the room of shame. All right, back in the comic book room, let's start the tour off with this magazine rack that I have. What I really wanted was one of those comic book stands. You know the type, but they're way too expensive, so I have this instead. On the top rack, I have some oversized stuff like this old Spider-Man record from the 70s. It's honestly pretty random what's even on this thing. Like, this, for example, is an old Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic. If you don't know, the Ninja Turtles were a comic book before they were a cartoon. This is a reprint of the first appearance of Harley Quinn, but it's an Art Germ cover. I love that artist. These are just comics from cartoons I loved as a kid. I think behind here is Tailspin somewhere. Yeah, there it is. I have some old romance comics from the 60s just because the covers are so iconic and like kind of hilarious. Amy, please. Find out if your girlfriend Jane loves me.
Oh, Peter, why didn't you ask me if I love you?
These are just covers by my favorite comic book artist, Alex Ross. The reason I have this thing in the first place is I used to sell comic books in an antique store, and I would just stock this and they would give me a cut of the sales made, but I don't do that anymore. I used to have a massive DVD collection because I used to work at a movie rental place and I was just kind of a film buff, and this is what it's whittled down to, hardly anything. On the top of the shelves, I have some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys, which are styled after those classic Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird comics that I was telling you about. I'm missing Leonardo though. I couldn't find him for a decent price. I think a lot of people see all my comic books and collectibles and stuff and think I must be rich, but I really don't spend a lot of money on this hobby. I'll explain how as we go. Some stuff I get for free just because I'm a content creator, like these fancy Marvel playing cards from Card Mafia were sent to me for free. I stopped working with the company because we did a giveaway together and they were like taking forever to send the kid that won the giveaway the stuff, and then they sent it to the wrong address and the kid was getting mad at me and I was like, I'm not getting paid for this. Why am I stressing out about this? And then the majority of these statues that you see up here were sent to me for free by an awesome company called Diamond Select Toys, but they just went bankrupt. In my closet here, I have some more Diamond Select toys, and behind them here, you'll see some Marvel books by a company called the Folio Society. They haven't sent me anything in a while, so I really don't have to say this, but the Folio Society is genuinely really awesome. Like, they have these really high quality reprints of original comic books included with these collections that I really highly recommend. It might be kind of hard to see, but behind these statues, I have a bunch of trade paperbacks, which are just collections of comic books that are supposed to be easier to read. I'm much more of a comic book guy though. Like, I don't mind reading these, especially when they're the smaller collections, but when you get into the big ones, like these Walking Dead collections, they're just kind of cumbersome to read and it doesn't feel like I'm reading a comic book, you know? So whenever possible, I like to read the actual comic book or magazine. No shade on you if you read these collections, I just prefer it this way. But storing comics is a total pain in the ass, especially when you have a large collection like I do. Ask any comic book nerd out there, Daredevil for some reason has attracted some of the best comic book writers over the last like 50 years. You seriously can't go wrong. But if you're new to comics and you want to try out Daredevil, I would suggest reading Mark Waid's Daredevil. It's super amazing and really easy to get into. You don't need any previous knowledge. Again, I love these old Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtle comics from before there was a cartoon. They actually recently teamed up to create a comic book called The Last Ronin, which is amazing. You need to check it out. If you haven't heard of it, it's this dystopian future where New York is being controlled by Shredder's grandson and all the Ninja Turtles have died except for one, and he's out for revenge. I have a large Spawn run here. I'm missing like 1 or 2 of the first 100 issues. These boxes contain a bunch of old DC comics that I really love. I'm more of a Marvel Comics guy, but I love anything from the Silver or Golden Age, which is like 60s and older.
Now that I've discovered your secret identity, Green Lantern, you must live up to your promise to marry me.
Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. Lois, those bullets are bouncing off of you. You're super, like me.
Right, Superman. Now do we get married?
Friggin' women, always trying to marry you. Am I right, guys? Over here I have Heavy Metal Magazine, the adult illustrated fantasy magazine. Basically, there's usually boobs inside, but there's some good like science fiction stories in there typically. But sometimes it's just bad stories that happen to have boobs. Over here I've got a couple boxes of Ghost Rider, a box of Deadpool, a box of Power Rangers and the Simpsons comics, and I think there's some Beavis and Butthead in there. Got Eerie and Creepy Magazine over here. I love old pulp magazines like this. These are just so cool. I've got a box for floating city ideas, so like comic books that I read and I thought, oh, I should make a video about that. This is a box of stuff that I need to sort and put away because I'm always buying comics. Got old Vampirella comic books, which everyone reads Vampirella because they love vampires, obviously. And a box of like key issues, meaning there's comics that are important storylines, early appearances of a comic book character. This is Ghost Rider's third comic book appearance. This is the first appearance of Carol Danvers. Or this is a comic that sells for a bit of money, and it's only because of the weird sexual innuendo going on here. Same with this one, actually. It's really beat up, but it's supposed to read, Archie, did you have any trouble rescuing me? I sure did, Betty. I had to beat off 3 other guys. So that's what's in the closet. Above the closet, I have some of my favorite key issues like Edge of Spider-Verse 2, the first appearance of Gwen Stacy, issue 14 of The Silver Surfer where he meets Spider-Man, the first appearance of Carnage, Amazing Spider-Man 361. I have the first appearance of Deadpool in New Mutants 98 and the first appearance of Harley Quinn in Batman Adventures number 12. The first Star Wars comic, an old Tales to Astonish. This is my holy grail right here. The first issue of Daredevil from 1964. There's a company called Comic Capsule that makes these holders. They're super cool. I want to get some more of them. Look, some people invest in gold, some people invest in real estate. I chose pictures of men in tights. I have the first She-Hulk here, the first Spider-Girl, which is an amazing character. I have all of her comics. The first appearance of Gamora, old Captain Marvel comic, Black Panther #1, Spider-Woman #1, and an old Strange Tales. This is probably my most valuable comic, Ultimate Fallout 4, the first appearance of Miles Morales. It's probably worth about $1,000. My favorite comic book character is Spider-Man. It's what got me into reading comic books, and I don't know, there's just something about the character that I love, and these are my oldest Spider-Man comics, so my oldest Amazing Spider-Man comics. This one's probably my favorite. It's just such a classic story. This is my oldest Spider-Man comic, Amazing Spider-Man #3. I paid, I think, a little over $100 for this, and you'll notice it's missing the top portion of the cover. There's a reason for that. So way back in the day, stores were able to return comic books that didn't sell and make some of their money back. They didn't have to return the whole comic, they could just return the top strip that indicated what comic it was and make that money back, and then sometimes the stores would just like hand out the comics to a relative or a kid or something. So this comic was supposed to have been destroyed because it didn't sell, yet here it is. This whole shelf is just Spider-Man comics. I've read all of these. I've been reading Spider-Man comics since I was, I don't know, 10 or something, and I love the character. This cover's by J. Scott Campbell, who's famous for drawing like pin-up figures basically, and it's just a totally normal way for Mary Jane to sit and enjoy her coffee. Just like here's a totally normal way Mary Jane would climb a building if she was Spider-Man. Over here I have all the Spider-Man comics that I haven't gotten around to reading yet. You can see I have a gigantic pile. Comic books are expensive. I don't actually buy a lot of comics new from the comic book store. I buy comic collections from people. I keep what I want and I sell what I don't want, and usually the comics are free or mostly free. This shelf here is my backdrop for when I'm filming videos. I've got a lot of older Marvel stuff on display. You'll notice the comics aren't in bags and boards because they reflect so badly when I record that I just pulled them all out. This here is the first appearance of Shang-Chi. How can I fight a super foe who has the power to melt my armor within seconds?
No matter where you flee, I shall find you and destroy you.
These Amalgam comics are pretty cool. It's a world where DC heroes and Marvel heroes combine into one. So this is Batman and Wolverine combining. This is Iron Man and Green Lantern combining. Up here I have some paintings of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that my friend Kaylee made me. Thank you, Kaylee. On the other side of the room I have my comic book drawer boxes. I have 30 of them. I have a longer video on this if you're interested, but basically I highly recommend them. You can grab any box and just pull it out, and there's your comics, and you can leave it freestanding. They all support each other. These are all Marvel comics that have been alphabetically organized, so just peeking through the holes here I have some Astonishing X-Men, some Avengers. Over here I've got Captain America, Down here I've got G.I. Joe. What I'd like to do one day is to paint the corner boxes of like the corresponding letter on the front of each box. I think that would be super cool. Like I would have this image of the Fantastic Four printed on the front of this box to signify that this is F. Yeah, I highly recommend these boxes. The only negative thing I can say about them is that they've sagged with time. Like you can see there's quite a large gap up here, but if we go down to the bottom, there's basically no gap. Above my drawer boxes, I have some of my favorite old DC comics. I just want to point out here on these old Batmans that they would reuse cover images. Like look how Robin and Batman are posed on this cover, and then move to this cover. They're in the exact same pose, just the opposite direction.
Great Scott! The refrigeration coil stopped working, and that caveman creature is coming out of suspended animation. The Elemental Man is now a man of iron, and he's changed me into soft calcium so he can crush me.
Haha, Batman, I'm matching my signal against the bat signal. Let's see you try to stop my pal.
A strange creature summoned from the sky by that weird lantern. What's happening to me? I'm becoming so fat, I can hardly run.
The day the Flash weighed 1,000 pounds. I love that cheesy Golden Age shit. And this is where I do all my filming. This is a stand-up desk actually, so I'll just stand it up. This is my laptop. You can see I have a microphone arm that I can move around that's hooked into this Scarlett 2 interface that then goes into the computer. And this is where I set my phone up to record. The only problem is that this thing, as you can see, you touch it slightly and it's just like moving like crazy.
And this is where my dog Lizard likes to hang out while I'm making videos. Right, Lizard?
So all these statues that you're seeing right now were supplied by Diamond Select Toys for me. They gave them to me for free to talk about on TikTok, and they're really cool about it. They weren't too like stringent on how I did it. They knew that just even having them in the background was gonna attract some attention. And honestly, they're all pretty damn cool. Like, I think this company makes or made really good toys. I love this Doc Ock statue. He's styled after the 90s Spider-Man animated series, but here's the thing, I don't love this Hulk statue. He just looks too much like Mark Ruffalo, which is what they're trying to do, but I don't know, I just wish he looked more like a comic book Hulk, you know? I always like these statues best when they're just trying to look like a comic book rather than a celebrity. I like this Star-Lord one. It would be way less cool if it was Chris Pratt's face instead of the mask. These three are some of my favorites. I have them above my workstation. They just are so cool, especially this Thanos, just like the scale of it is impressive. Again, this Hulk statue is just too Mark Ruffalo for me. The only one I wouldn't really recommend is this Carnage statue that they sell. It came with all these like pieces that stick into his back, but they're all too small for the holes that they're supposed to stick in, so they would just like fall out if you even like nudge it slightly. Oh, this Deadpool head, by the way, is not Diamond Select Toys. This was a popcorn bucket you could get for Deadpool versus Wolverine. This MODOK statue is another one of my favorites. He's just such a ridiculous, weird, but iconic villain. Like, how can't you love this? And up here I have some toys that aren't from Diamond Select Toys, the coolest of which is this X-Wing that I got at a garage sale. Speaking of which, I've gotten a ton of cheap comic books from garage sales over the years. I'll just message ahead of time and be like, hey, do you have any comic books? This is my arcade room. I love these arcades. I don't play them very often though, honestly, because they're just more fun with two people. I've got the Arcade 1-Up Turtles in Time cabinet. It has this like light up switchboard. It's 4-player. It's super duper fun. And then I've got 3 fighting cabinets all by Arcade 1-Up right here. I've got Mortal Kombat 2, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and Street Fighter 2. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is definitely my favorite here, not just because I'm a big comic book fan. They're just really, really fun fighting games. These cabinets, by the way, typically will include like 12 different games. This here is my II arcade cabinet, which was a cool concept. They had an online store where you could pay to download games, but they went out of business. So what I have on here is all I'll ever have on here unless I decide to like jailbreak it and mod it. Now let's enter the room of shame. It's a whole ass another room full of comic books. The closet's full of comic books. The other closet's full of comic books. And then I have like 3 giant shelves full of comics as well. Remember when I said that I buy a lot of comic collections? Well, I don't sell as much as I should. I'll sell enough to like make my money back, and then the rest just kind of ends up in here until I sort it out. And I honestly hate selling comic books because I love them all so much. I want to keep them all, but you know, I can't. So yeah, most of this is stuff that I just need to get around to sell. Oh, and a drum set I never play. As always, my name's Sean. Thank you for watching, you friggin' nerd.